So, is there any truth to the Ark of the Covenant being some sort of ancient death doomsday weapon? And does it have a history?
Supercuts!
Shalom, everyone. All right, quick show of hands. Who had the CIA, ancient relics, and UFOs all on their conspiracy theory bingo card? No? Well, strap on your helmet because today's Supercut is going to feel like we're trying to solve the Da Vinci Code while being abducted by aliens. Now, when we think of the CIA, we think of, well, spies, espionage, maybe a few movie scenes with dramatic chase music. But believe it or not, the CIA has also dabbled in the weird stuff, like psychic phenomena, UFOs, and yes, even the mysteries surrounding ancient artifacts like the Ark of the Covenant. First up, remote viewing. Some of the documents you see scrolling in the background of this video can be found right on the CIA's Reading Room website. Yes, the official CIA site. Links in the description below. Talk about a once classified program called Project Stargate. Remote viewing was basically psychic spying. The CIA was trying to train people to see distant places or hidden objects using just their mind. Think mental Google Earth, but with more headaches. One of the reports describes viewers attempting to locate religious artifacts, including the Ark of the Covenant itself. So yes, the CIA apparently thought, hey, maybe psychics can help us track down the most powerful artifact from the Bible. Totally normal day at the office, right? In case you need a refresher, the Ark of the Covenant was a sacred wooden chest covered in gold and adorned with an ornamental lid, believed to be the most sacred object by the Israelites.
What was the Ark of the Covenant? Well, in most general terms, it was a sacred object in ancient Israelite religion.
The Ark of the Covenant was a lidded, gold-leafed wooden chest containing the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments.
The Ark was a box. It was made of acacia wood and overlaid with gold plating inside and out. And it measured 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits wide and high, so roughly 3 feet 9 inches, a little under 4 feet long, and 2 feet 3 inches, again, wide and high. So it wasn't a very big object. To look at it, you would not necessarily have been afraid of it, for sure. When the Israelite camp was stationed and not traveling through the wilderness, the Ark was housed in the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. That was the inner square room of the mobile tabernacle structure.
In transport, the Ark was concealed under a large veil made of skins and blue cloth, carefully hidden even from the eyes of the priests and the Levites who carried it. When at rest, a portable building, the tabernacle, meaning residence or dwelling place, was set up to house the Ark. It was built of woven layers of curtains along with 48 boards clad with polished gold standing like vertical blinds. Solomon's temple in Jerusalem superseded it as the dwelling place of God some 300 years later.
It is described in the Hebrew Bible as containing the 10 Commandments tablets.
According to various texts within the Hebrew Bible, it also contained Aaron's rod and a pot of manna.
This practice mirrors how ancient Near Eastern kings would deposit covenant treaties made with other nations inside the footstool of their thrones. Since the law was the basis for the covenant relationship between Yahweh and Israel, the Ark, this box, became known as the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. according to Numbers 14:44, for example.
The ark was created according to instructions given to Moses by God and was carried by the Levites as the Israelites traveled.
But the Bible connected it to the presence of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And so it was never to be touched by anyone. And this is why the Israelites carried it with the use of poles on their way to the Promised Land after the Exodus from Egypt. The ark had a lid as well. The Hebrew term for that is kaporet, and it was made of solid gold to which two cherubim, angelic cherubim, were fixed. English translations refer to the lid as the mercy seat. The ark was also called God's footstool, so a seat and a footstool. Now, the two conceptions are compatible since ancient thrones of the period had a footstool that was part of the throne.
It's basically the ancient equivalent of carrying around nuclear launch codes, except if you even touch it wrong, you died instantly.
There has to be a bridge between the finite and the infinite. There has to be a place where the ephemeral meets the eternal. There has to be a bridge between the knowable and the unknowable. And there has to be bedrock at the foundation. The ark, which is the portal to God, is to be carried on the shoulders of those who are holy. It is not to be touched. To touch the ark is to risk death.
Over the centuries, countless legends have claimed the ark was hidden, moved, stolen, or even taken off planet. Yup, off planet. We're getting there.
There's a mystery involving the Ark of the Covenant. It was, in fact, lost. After the Israelites made it to the Promised Land, the Ark eventually was installed into the Temple of Solomon during Solomon's reign. We know that from 1 Kings chapter 8. From that moment onwards, however, silence and mystery envelop the fate of the Ark.
The Ark was not, by the way, in Herod's temple. It had disappeared long before. There's another theory that it was taken by Shishak in 2 Chronicles 12, and that was the theory that they made the spoof movie Indiana Jones about there on that premise.
Some scholars and students of the Ark mystery have suggested that the reason that the Ark doesn't appear in the accounts of Nebuchadnezzar's invasion and the destruction of the Israelite temple is because it just wasn't there.
Hidden on the Temple Mount. There are many people in Israel today that believe it's hidden under the Temple Mount. That's the official rabbinical view, by the way, but people who've really studied it doubt that for a number of reasons.
Now, this has led to some what I would call nonsensical views. For instance, there's the view of Tom Kratzer and Ron Wyatt, who is now deceased. They tell stories of alternative views and how they went to search for the Ark and how they found it, but again, the government stole it, or it was lost, or they couldn't find their way back. I mean, there's all sorts of variations about this. There are even some fuzzy photos. One of them has a nail in the Ark, so we know that probably isn't the Ark of the Covenant.
Many people believe the Ark was taken by the Babylonians, but there's no evidence for that.
Curiously, the Ark is not mentioned in the grocery list of objects taken back to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, either in the list the Bible gives us or in the list that has survived in Babylonian records. The omission of the Ark can't just be a scribal oversight either. The Ark of the Covenant is not mentioned when the Israelites returned to their homeland 70 years later and rebuilt the temple. That's in Ezra chapters 1 through 6. So both going to Babylon and coming back from Babylon, the Ark is missing in the descriptions of either journey.
But there is an interesting allusion in the text in 2 Kings 21 and especially 2 Chronicles 35 that the Ark was taken to Egypt during Manasseh's atrocities.
Now, fast forward to the UFO stuff. The CIA wasn't just mildly curious about unidentified flying objects. They were deeply involved in investigating them. Some of the links we looked at showed documents discussing UFO sightings, government cover-ups, and strange aerial phenomena. Enter John Lear. John Lear, yes, the son of the Lear jet inventor, became a major figure in the UFO disclosure movement. He claimed the U.S. government knew all about alien visitations, secret underground bases, and even alleged that ancient artifacts like the Ark might have extraterrestrial origins. According to some fringe theories, and let's be honest, they're fascinating, the Ark of the Covenant wasn't just a sacred religious relic. It might have been a piece of alien technology, gifted or maybe accidentally left by visitors from beyond the stars.
Aside from serving as a repository for the tablets of the law given to Israel at Mount Sinai, according again to the book of Exodus, the Ark had other purposes in Israelite life. The Ark of the Covenant was associated with Israelite ritual, war strategy, and divine revelation. First, according to Leviticus 16, the Ark was the central object of the annual Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. That was a ritual that had central importance to the people of Israel. This was the only day of the sacred Israelite year that the high priest could move beyond the veil that blocked access into the most holy place where the Ark was stationed. And we can read about that in Exodus 26 and 1 Kings 8. Second, because the Ark was associated with the very presence of Yahweh, the God of Israel, it was at times taken out onto the battlefield against Israel's enemies. 1 Samuel 4:3 is a good example. On some of these occasions, miraculous events did occur, such as the parting of the Jordan River in Joshua 3, verses 8 through 17. Lastly, God would also dispense information when appearing in a cloud above the Ark. Exodus 25:22, Exodus 30, verse 6 are examples. So consequently, the Ark had a kind of oracle function as well.
There are holy things that cannot be touched except at mortal risk. Those things that cannot be touched are at the very foundation of the community. The Ark must be placed at the center of the temple. The temple must be placed at the center of the community. The community must be arranged around what is untouchable and unshakable.
So, was the Ark a death ray, a death weapon? There isn't a single verse in the Bible that describes the Ark emitting any sort of beam or death ray. Some people, though, would point to 2 occasions in the Bible where people died because of the Ark. There's an example in 2 Samuel 6, 5 through 10, where Uzzah touches the Ark to steady it and is struck dead. The second one is the men of Beth Shemesh incident. They die after looking into the Ark, which requires removing the lid and thus touching it. So yes, God was serious about punishing people who touched the Ark. It was his primary sacred object. But for it to be a weapon, you'd have to put it on the battlefield with a sign that said, "Don't touch me," because that's the only way that it's lethal.
One of the documents found in the Abbottabad compound, yes, Osama bin Laden's hideout, was a copy of Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. This massive book touches on secret knowledge, ancient mysteries, and the belief that spiritual artifacts like the Ark are connected to lost wisdom, or possibly even cosmic forces. In other words, people in very high places were at least interested in the ideal that human history has way more sci-fi in it than we were taught in school. So let's connect the dots. The CIA was trying to use psychics to find lost biblical relics. UFO researchers like John Lear suggested that objects like the Ark might actually be alien tech. Documents about ancient occult knowledge were found in places connected to global terrorism and intelligence operations. It's a crazy triangle: intelligence agencies, ancient religious relics, and aliens, all dancing together in a bizarre waltz. Here's where we land. Was the Ark of the Covenant a supernatural object or high technology that ancient people didn't understand? Did the CIA know something we didn't? Or were they just desperate enough to try literally anything? And maybe most importantly, how much of our known history is actually missing pages from a much bigger, much stranger book?
Many biblical scholars have wondered if the Ark of the Covenant derived from an earlier ancient Near Eastern holy object, the Egyptian palanquin. While styles varied, Egyptian palanquins can account for all of the structural elements of the Ark of the Covenant. Egyptian palanquins were boxes made of wood, often plated with gold. They were at times carried by means of poles by priests, and they gave oracles. They dispensed divine revelation, and at times had winged deities or creatures painted on their short sides. An Egyptian antecedent to the Ark of the Covenant actually makes good sense in terms of the historical context of the Exodus from Egypt, which is the setting for the Ark of the Covenant's creation. Moses was, after all, raised in Egypt in the biblical story, and the Ark was actually built by a Hebrew who had learned his craft while, you guessed it, in Egypt as a slave. It's overstated to think that the Ark was an Egyptian palanquin, but the Egyptian palanquin seems to have served as a model for the Ark of the Covenant. In the end, the Ark of the Covenant was one of Israel's most important sacred objects, but it wasn't a doomsday weapon.
Apparently, the Levites, to get it out of harm's way, go down to Elephantine Island, the headquarters of Egypt, and seek protection from Pharaoh Necho. And Elephantine Island was a fortified capital, and the Ark apparently stays there from 630 BC through about 430 BC, about 2 centuries. And that's documented archaeologically, by the way. And so it was an early advanced outpost of Egypt. It was their southernmost border town, the fortified installation serving as the First Dynasty fortress. It had military importance during the 25th dynasty, the so-called Ethiopian dynasty. And there was a temple to YHWH that served the Jewish colony prior to the Persian occupations of 525 to 404. And you can find this confirmed in the official guidebook by the German Institute of Archaeology in Cairo back in 1998. So this has that substance. Well, it stays there for about 2 centuries. Then it moves down to Lake Tana. Way south is a gigantic lake, Lake Tana, and it's full of a lot of islands. And one of those islands is Tanakirkos Island. And it stays there for 800 years until it, and then it finally, and we visited that, by the way, several times. And this is one of the monks there showing me something he's very proud of. And he has an Ethiopian Bible, and in their Bible, they have reckoning of Mary and Joseph and the baby visiting back, if you know your New Testament, and they have a record of them visiting Tanakirkos Island, and so they've then it remains there for 800 years until it finally moves to Axum, where it presumably is there still today, and so it stays there until they feel they are committed to guarding it until Messiah rules on Mount Zion.
The most coherent, and I would say the most biblical view, is the one that we really don't like. And that is the Ark of the Covenant was destroyed, either intentionally or maybe accidentally, by Nebuchadnezzar's army during the invasion. I mean, they would not necessarily have known what was in the temple if they just randomly burned it down. The verses that you actually see in Scripture that talk about the lament for the ark and suggest the fate of the ark point in this direction. Now, again, they're not conclusive, but this is what Scripture suggests, and therefore I think it is the most coherent view that we have to offer.
At the end of the day, whether you see these connections as serious research, desperate experiments, or just the fever dreams of bored spies and sci-fi fans. One thing's for sure. Truth is way, way stranger than fiction. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Let's keep asking questions. Stay curious, because sometimes the weirdest stuff is hiding right in plain sight. Until next time, Shalom, Shalom.